Okay, so it's 1 minute past, so I think we'll just get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, depending where you are in the world. And welcome, and thank you for joining our webinar. So this webinar is hosted by the Early and Mid-Career Networks of ISBNPA in collaboration with ISPAH. My name is Sarah Shaw, and I'm a member of the Early Career Committee at ISBNPA. Along with my colleague, Dr. Maureen Ashe, from the Mid-Career Network, I'm going to be moderating today's webinar just to ensure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. So before I begin, let's try and get the slide. There we go. Oh, go back. I just want to remind everyone about the range of webinars that are held through ISBNPA and ISPAH throughout the year. These are hosted by our early and mid-career networks, as well as our special interest groups. All the webinars are recorded and uploaded to our website, so please go on there and check out some of our webinars from the past. I'd just like to plug our next early career researcher webinar. It's going to discuss how we get the most out of the conferences that we attend, and it's going to be held in May, so just in time for those of you who are going to be visiting Prague. So closer to the time, look out for the webinar registration link and get your name in there so you can attend that one. So moving on to today's webinar, we're using the Zoom link. So anyone that's attending the webinar will be automatically muted. This is for everyone except for the speakers and the organisers. This is just to prevent any noise so we can all concentrate on the presentation. However, we really do want to encourage people to participate by asking questions, and you can do this by clicking on the question and answer tab at the bottom of your screen here. Please use the Q&A tab rather than the chat tab, just so we can monitor all the questions and make sure that none of them are missed. So today's session, we have a packed session for you today with 5 speakers, and we are going to be focusing on the role of mentoring and what's in it for mentors and mentees. So we have 5 speakers today. I'm going to give just a really brief introduction about our speakers, just in the interest of time. The first one is Dr. Megan Mueller, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at UCLA. Megan has been coordinating the ISBNPA mentoring program since 2016, and today she's going to tell us just a little bit more about what's involved in the mentoring scheme and what you can get out of it and ways that you can become involved in that scheme. We're then going to hear from some of the people that participate in that scheme. So our first guest is Dr. Jayne Fulkerson, who is a professor of nursing research at the University of Minnesota. Jayne has been an active member of the mentoring scheme at ISBNPA for some time now, and she has a number of mentees all around the world. So today we're really grateful to hear from 3 of those mentees. The first is Christie Martin, who is a third-year PhD candidate at the University of Minnesota. Jayne has been mentoring Christie since 2016. Then we also have Dr. Holly Harris, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at Penn State University, and Jayne has also been mentoring Holly since early 2018. And then finally, we have Elina Järvelä-Reijonen, who is a PhD student at the University of Eastern Finland. Jayne has also been mentoring Elina since January 2018. So we're really looking forward to hearing from all of our mentors and mentees and just learning about your experiences of the mentor scheme. So I would just like to hand over at this point to our first speaker, who is Megan. And Megan's going to tell us a little bit more about what mentoring is and the mentoring scheme at ISBNPA. So hi, Megan.
Great. Hi. Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm just going to get my slides up here. 1 second. Okay. Great. Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about mentoring and health behavior research. What's in it for mentors and mentees? As Sarah mentioned, there's several of us talking today. I will go through the mentoring scheme or talk a little bit about the mentoring scheme that we offer through ISBNPA, but I'll also talk a little bit about what mentoring is in general, why it's important, what are some potential challenges, how do you ensure that you have a strong mentoring relationship. Lots of things in store for you today. And then we'll talk with Jayne and her mentees to kind of get an idea of what their experience has been like participating in the program. Oops. Oh, I'm gonna have to go, excuse me. Okay. So mentoring is a process for helping somebody to develop. The notion of mentoring has been around for a long time. Being an academic, of course, we want to define our terms, right? So a mentor is someone who offers support and guidance. It can be an experienced and trusted counselor or friend. It is help by one person to another in making transitions in knowledge, work, or thinking. So we're thinking about development of a person here and how they see the world and how they experience the world. There are a lot of benefits of mentoring for the mentee. There is the potential for an increased sense of confidence and self-esteem. If the mentoring relationship happens with an institution or organization, it can increase the mentee's value, sense of value within that organization. Essentially, it gives someone, guarantees that somebody has somebody who cares about them, assures them that they're not alone in dealing with sort of day-to-day challenges and makes them feel like they matter. You know, the mentor will provide help and support. A mentee and a strong mentoring relationship can hopefully be open about vulnerabilities. That's something that's very important to have established rapport and have an open relationship or an open conversations about what your strengths and your weaknesses. It can give an increased understanding of the institution or organization that that individual is working in. It can also be a relationship that focuses on specific skills. So coaching or training, mentors can provide skill building as well. As mentees are generally in the process of figuring out career opportunities, mentors can provide lots of insights into potential ideas about what they can do. And then again, training in a new skill. But there's also benefits of mentoring for the mentor. So it's not a one-way street, right? So mentors also get a greater sense of value within the organization or institution that they're currently working in. It gives them a sense of satisfaction by training a developing mind. It can also help the mentor further develop their professional network if they're trying to connect their mentee with other individuals within their field. You know, that could provide an opportunity to reach out to somebody whom you might not have otherwise. Also, mentees sometimes bring individuals, their own networks into a relationship. And so you're sort of expanding your own network through your mentee as well. Again, it provides a greater understanding of the organization and institution within which the mentor works or is a part of. And given that you're talking with someone about sort of the challenges they might be facing or the strengths that they view in a particular organization, it also gives the mentor a greater understanding of kind of what's happening within their institution or their organization. Mentors can also use mentoring relationships as a way to improve on their own skills, including one-on-one communication skills, their coaching skills, and their management skills. So mentoring takes on many forms. It can be in the form, again, of training or coaching, where it's really about skill building, but it can also be in sort of these more abstract sort of outcomes like support or being a role model for success, or providing advice on something, or giving somebody direction for where to go. In doing research for this webinar, I found that there's a lot of resources that really promote the value of active listening. So, mentors should meet mentees where they are and really understand what it is that mentee is asking for and what that person needs. And, in doing that, you're sort of creating an environment or a situation where success is possible. And with regards to particular situations, a mentor can help a mentee explore current challenges, talk through the choices and options available to them to deal with those challenges, discuss what kinds of outcomes these potential options may be, and then identify next steps and a path forward for dealing with specific issues. So mentors are expected to be active listeners. So again, not sort of dictating what someone should or shouldn't do, but instead listening to the needs and desires of that particular mentee, asking lots of questions, providing support when it's needed, but also encouraging independent thinking. So, we all want our mentees to grow up and go and do things on their own. So that's sort of the benefit of being an active listener, and really providing the environment that's supportive and motivating for them. Mentors can also be role models for boundaries and principles for how you should behave as a researcher, as a professional, by creating a space that's based on boundaries and principles. They can encourage their mentees to come up with their own solutions and problems rather than telling them what they should do. And ultimately, the mentor can provide an environment where the mentee is able to make the most of their talents by, again, being an active listener and providing the advice that they need when they need it. When I was doing my research for this webinar, I came across a really good rule. It's the 24-3 rule. So the idea is that sometimes a mentee will come to you and be extremely excited about doing every possible thing out there in the world. They want to change the world. And maybe they have specific ideas for how they want to do that. And as a mentor, you might think, wow, this person's way overly ambitious. So the 24-3 rule is a good rule to have if somebody comes to you with what might seem as overly ambitious goals, where you can wait for 24 seconds before you approach that individual with, more sort of doubtful or negative advice, and instead think of the possible ways that they could pursue what they say they want to pursue. And then, the next stage is to wait 24 minutes, and then the next stage is to wait 24 hours. And the idea is that you come to that relationship or to that conversation with more of a positive view, so that you're really creating, you're giving energy rather than taking it away for your mentee, which I thought was a really interesting rule. Great. So the mentor has lots of things that we'd like them to do, or that they should do. Of course, building the mentee self-confidence, again, by remaining positive, acting as a role model, because mentoring relationships are different from the PI to employee relationship. It's a way that it's a relationship that a mentee can have that is outside the line of their regular management structure. A mentor can also give insights into the cultures and values of the field, their institutions, the organizations that they work in, including ISBNPA. They can share their experience and expertise. They can give feedback and provide advice where possible and relevant. They can also indicate or point their mentee towards additional resources. The mentee is also expected to do a lot of things to make sure that the relationship is a strong one or that it works. So they should be prepared to drive the mentoring relationship forward and take ownership of their own learning. So, mentees have a lot of logistical responsibilities in this case and need to come to the relationship with an open mind. They should also be very careful about not approaching somebody to be a mentor without having specific goals in mind for that relationship. So there's this big push in a lot of fields to have a mentoring relationship, but you can't just approach somebody and say, I need a mentor, will you be my mentor? You need to sort of have an idea of what it is exactly that you want to get out of that relationship and have specific goals and decide how you want to work towards them. The mentee should agree and commit to the schedule of meetings. This should be a priority. They should be prepared for those meetings. And if a meeting happens and the mentor and mentee agree upon actions, the mentee should have undertaken those actions by the next meeting. And then because this is a relationship where, you're sharing a lot about each other, you should maintain the confidentiality of that relationship. So what does good mentoring look like? It includes things like careful listening. A good mentor is a good listener. They hear exactly what the student is trying to tell them without interpreting or judging. And the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine had a great report where they had some good advice where they said, when you think you may have understood a point, it might be helpful to repeat it to the student or the mentee and ask whether you understood it correctly. So through careful listening, you convey your empathy to the student and your understanding of the challenges they face. And then when that student feels the empathy, they know there's the relationship is open for clear communication and more effective mentoring. Keeping in touch. So sometimes there's going to be a mentee that requires only brief check-ins. They sort of know what they're doing. They have a clear goal. They're on their way. You really just need to check in with them every once in a while. Sometimes mentees will need more intensive meetings or schedules. And so for those mentees, you might be meeting weekly or every other day or whatever it is. But this is all dependent on just what the goals are for the relationship and also the needs of that particular mentee. But it's also important to have multiple mentors. So no one mentor can possibly know everything. And so having perspectives from different people can only strengthen the development of that potential mentee. And building networks. So connecting mentees with other potential mentors or other people that you might know who can provide them with the skills and advice and all of those things that they might need. So I get this a lot as sort of the coordinator of the mentoring program. When do you become a mentor or a mentee versus a mentee? When if I want to participate in the ISBNPA mentoring program, can I be both a mentor and a mentee? And the answer is yes. So when you have experience that can be shared with others who do not have that same experience, you can be a mentor. Often this is determined by career step. If you're a student, you might be mentored by a postdoc or a faculty member. But sometimes that student can bring something to the table that, a postdoc might learn from, for example. So it's not always determined by where you are in your career, but often it is. Like any relationship, there can be potential challenges. So sometimes there are conflicting priorities where, we're all really busy. We all have research and papers and grants, or if we're looking, if we're in a different space, a different field, maybe we're in the process of applying for jobs or doing other things. Sometimes it's really easy to make it so that the mentoring relationship becomes a lower priority, but in order to have a strong mentoring relationship, you have to make it a priority. Sometimes there's mismatched mentoring styles where somebody needs more hand-holding and the mentee might need more hand-holding, and the mentor is really more of they sort of expect independence. And so in that case, it's not going to work out very well. So this is something that you can sort of decipher through early conversations with the mentee and mentor to really see, you know, is this going to work? Is this something, can we work towards making this work if you do have mismatched styles? There might be miscommunications or conflicting expectations. So again, this is sort of reinforces the fact that it's really important to have the expectations of the relationship stated up front. And there could be unreasonable expectations from the mentees. Your mentor is not your fairy godmother or fairy godfather. They're not going to make things happen for you out of thin air. So it's important to have realistic expectations. They can't do everything for you. You have to bring something to the table too. So how do you ensure a strong mentoring relationship? Have concrete deadlines and stick to them. Reciprocity is key. So mentoring is a two-way street. Your mentor can and should provide you with, you know, all the things that they're committed to do, but you know, sometimes a mentee should also be providing something for their mentor, be that just, you know, sending them a paper or connecting them with a colleague. You know, it's good to have reciprocity within that relationship. Whenever conflicts do arise, manage them as soon as possible. Understand that the relationship does evolve over time. So like any relationship, it's not going to be static. You're going to have to kind of grow and change with, you know, how you each grow and change. For mentees especially, don't disappear. So maybe you're feeling nervous because you missed a deadline or something. It's better to contact your mentor and let them know that you're going to be late, rather than just disappearing and kind of avoiding them. Be compassionate. Maybe you're mentoring your mentor-mentee relationship, you don't really talk about personal things. But for this, you know, you just sort of have to understand that we're all people. And so even if you're not fully aware of what's going on in that person's life, you have to understand that they are dealing with other things. And so you can't expect them to just drop everything for you all the time. You need to be compassionate and understand that that person has personal things that they're dealing with as well. And be honest with yourself about what you can do, especially when you're establishing those goals and sort of activities that you're trying to do. So the ISBNPA mentoring program scheme is a program that we started in about 2015. And essentially, it's a great way for people to get involved within the organization. It's open to all members of the society. And through the mentoring process, we like to promote a culture where all ISBNPA members feel empowered and supported and ask each other for support, and where members feel open to supporting others' development. So we currently have 18 members from all over the world, mentors who have identified as being available to mentor individuals, including Dr. Fulkerson. And these, in order to become involved in the program, the only thing that a mentee would have to do is to log on to this mentoring page here. I put the website up, but if you go to the ISBNPA webpage, you can find it fairly easily. And look at the list of mentors, and then there's a button under each person's picture that allows you to request more information. It's the mentoring request form, and if you fill out that form, that will put you in the system as someone who's interested in being mentored by that person, and we'll connect you. You can also email me directly, so I've included my name here. I will also say that there have been some mentoring relationships that have been established that aren't necessarily, the mentor didn't want to be a part of the site, but a mentee reached out to them individually. And in this case, they were both ISBNPA mentors, and we put them in touch, but it wasn't like that person wanted to be available to mentor, or they weren't available to mentor more than just that one person. So if you do know somebody else who's not listed on the page and you're interested in connecting with them, we can do as best we can to connect you with them. Or if you have sort of an idea of a particular field or need that you need, we can also work on connecting you with somebody who might be a good fit. I will also state that the mentoring program is very flexible, so that there's, the idea is that it should be helpful for you. So there's no timeline, there's no required number of times that you meet. All of this is established by the mentor and mentee relationship. Great, so now I'm gonna turn it over to Jayne Fulkerson, Christie Martin, Holly Harris, and Elina. And we'll talk a little bit with them about their experience with the program. Okay. Okay, are you guys on? Jayne, Holly, Christie?
Hello.
Hello.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much again for participating in this webinar and for being willing to share more about your experiences in the program. So I have a few questions here for you that I'll go through. I guess to start out, why do you all feel that mentoring is important?
I can start with that, answering that question. So I believe mentoring is important at every career stage. So even during my PhD supervisors had mentors for themselves. So it just made sense that, going through, a budding career and wanting to turn into an academic flower, you need to kind of be, you need to have someone kind of guide you and show you the way. So for me, it was really a commitment to my professional development and my personal growth as well. And I also felt that mentoring is key for self-reflection, advice seeking, and also monitoring your progress and building strong relationships. For me, mentoring wasn't trying to get all of the answers and, expecting a mentor to be able to answer every question I have. It was mainly about guiding me through the process of being able to think for myself.
Great. Wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about how each of you, because Christie, Elina, and Holly are all mentees of Dr. Fulkerson. So she's got lots of mentees here. And I'm just curious, how did each of you initiate the conversation with Jayne? And how did you identify her as a potential mentor?
Well, I can start. I had been thinking about getting a mentor via ISBNPA for a longer period of time. I had been a member for some years, and I thought that this would be a great opportunity. But I finally took the step when I was with my PhD thesis in that kind of a phase where I was able to think about life after PhD. So I wanted to have someone to talk about what are my plans, how to think about the life after PhD. And the list of the mentors on the ISBNPA website was very helpful. And I was thinking quite a long time about my goals and criteria, how to choose the mentor, and then I ended up in Jayne and contacted her with the contact form at the website. And I think it's great that it was made so easy, but still I hesitated a bit. Like, can I really contact this high-level professor far away? But I want to encourage everyone that if you are thinking the same, yes, you can contact them.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. And I have a very similar story to Elina as well. So I was coming towards the end of my PhD, and this coincided with obviously a lot of soul searching And I also went to the 2017 ISBNPA conference in Victoria, Canada. And I did lots of networking there. And after the conference, I really wanted to get more involved with the society. So I was on the website, I was joining special interest groups, and now part of the Children and Family Special Interest Group, and also the Communications Committee. And I came across the mentoring side. And that's when I found Jayne. And for me, it did definitely, her experience, and I was familiar with her work, her expertise was something that I was looking for a number of reasons. Firstly, because she was in the same field as me, and that was really important to have that common understanding in that same research field. So both looking at child nutrition, and that was my interest and something that I wanted to move forward to. And then secondly, it was really important for me to have a mentor who was from a different country as me. And coming towards the end of my PhD, I really wanted to expand not only my networks, but kind of my global perspectives on what I can get out of an academic career. And so Jayne fit both of these criteria. And, you know, I messaged her via the form on the website and got a reply. So it was, you know, fantastic. Yeah, the rest is really history. And now, so that was back when I was in Australia, and now I'm living in the US. So that mentoring relationship has really made that transition, moving from the Australian academic system to the US academic system.
Great.
Great, thank you. And as Sarah said earlier, Dr. Fulkerson has been my academic advisor since 2016, so it was actually a natural fit for her to be my mentor, being a student member of ISBNPA. And I actually chose Jayne as my advisor because of her background in psychology and her extensive research in child and family obesity prevention. Jayne has over 125 publications and several large grants, and so I knew I'd be able to learn a lot about planning and implementing and evaluating public health interventions. I'd actually previously worked with her, for her as a TA as well, and I know that she's knowledgeable, conscientious, and committed to excellence. And so I knew she'd be able to meet many of the expectations of an ideal mentor that Megan so nicely outlined in her presentation as well.
Wonderful. Great. And Jayne, what do you feel the personal benefits are of being a mentor?
I received so many benefits from mentees as well as mentors. So your point about everyone can use a mentor regardless of what stage they're at. I have mentors as well, and learn lots of different things from different people. So again, your comment about having multiple mentors and learning different things, because no one has every skill or everything you're looking for. So I think that's really important. I've really enjoyed my mentorship relationships with each of with Elina, Christie, and Holly. It's been really wonderful to work with them. So learning from them is important for me too. And the things you outlined in the beginning of the webinar were right on. Really learning about myself as I mentor as well. So learning about them, listening to them, where they're at. Everyone's really different, and then kind of tailoring based on that.
Great, thank you. Great, so for the mentees, how often do you guys meet? When, where, what do you talk about? What's a mentoring meeting look like for you?
So I can start with that. Jayne and I actually meet about once a week, and we usually meet in person, but sometimes via WebEx. Jayne is really responsive to email and text as well, which is nice. And our conversations are a great balance between being task-oriented and discussion-based. And so she helps walk me through and talk through my needs as a scholar and a student researcher. And we do anything from talking about academic milestones to my research plan. She even helps me out with my statistics. And so we cover a lot of ground in our meetings. What's great about Jayne is that she naturally employs motivational interviewing techniques. And so she listens and gently guides me through my thought processes. And this is really important because she helps me make my career decisions based off of my personal life's mission and long-term goals. And Jayne also has a capacity to see the bigger picture, which is really important to me as a mentee?
Okay, thanks. I'll continue. Well, we have met via Skype, depending on my needs and our schedules. And I think we have had 3 or 4 Skype meetings during the year. And in the meantime, we have also been in contact via email. And I think this has worked very well. And I had the feeling that Jayne has really given her time for this mentorship. And what we discuss, I sent beforehand some topics that I would like to discuss about. And also quite often Jayne has given me something to think about for the next meeting. And we have discussed, for example, about the struggles during the PhD work and how to make a career plan based on personal values and own ambitions. And Jayne gave me a form to fill in to help with the career plan, to think about my vision and my values and goals and resources and things like that. And how to think both my own personal life and the professional career. And that was quite hard, but also very useful to fill in that form.
I'm pretty much very similar to Elina as well, because what Jayne and I discuss is also very kind of abstract and thinking about career goals and how to achieve them. So we also meet on Skype about 3 to 4 times a year, and of course it's depending on each other's schedules. Jayne also gave me the professional development worksheet, which kind of outlines what my short-term, medium-term, long-term goals are and how these are informed by my own values. So this was a very useful but scary exercise, because you feel like you're trying to plan out your whole career, which is impossible, but it is good to plan and think about it. And something that Jayne has taught me throughout this mentoring relationship is that if you don't plan this, someone else will plan your career for you. And so that was really useful. And that was also useful because I did fill out the form and gave it to Jayne, and she said, okay, well, you know, you have a really good sense of science communication, and you look like you really could get into science communication. Have you ever thought about getting into health policy? And so that gave me something to think about and something to play with in my mind and do a little bit of research on that area. And after doing that research, I realized, you know what, this isn't for me. So, but it was useful to even explore that. And it's something that I don't think I would have, having not talked with Jayne about that. So it really has kind of helped refine my career goals and what I do and don't want. And generally we kind of do just some abstract problem solving, decision making, and just refining career pathways.
That's great. Great. So I guess this question's for anyone who's interested in or who wants to share their experience. So tell me about a time when, or tell us about a time when you applied something that you learned during a mentoring session to your professional life.
Well, I can go ahead and start with that on what I learned from my mentees. I'll start with Christie. Christie's are incredibly technologically savvy. And I like electronics, but it's not necessarily my forte. She's patiently nudged me along to engage and work on documents together remotely. As you know now, she's from Minnesota, but she's in California. She's a jet setter. So I found one time I chuckled after a meeting because we were meeting on WebEx. And we were also on the phone because the audio wasn't great. We were sharing each other's screens. She was running data analysis and sharing her screen with me so we could discuss things. And I thought, wow, this is full use of technology. So I really appreciate that about Christie. And she's also very passionate about public health and her patients as a nurse in a hospital. And she reminds me of the importance of why we're doing what we're doing. We're making behavioral changes in people's lives to make them healthier. So for me, sometimes I can get real task oriented, and thinking about why we're doing this work is important. As far as Holly and Elina, it's been so wonderful getting to know them. They're both very curious, and they ask a lot of questions, and a lot of our questions have to do with, as Holly mentioned, kind of the academic system between the US and Australia, or what it's like to do research in a different country. And so I learned quite a bit. It helps me understand how to better promote, talk about my work and communicate my science to other people who may not be living in the same environment. And some of those discussions are actually what helped prompt us to put together a symposium for the ISBNPA conference coming up. So we're going to be talking about cross-cultural differences in looking at demographics and populations related to obesity and diabetes. So it's fruitful in many ways, but landed us in working on that symposium. So that was really fun.
That's great. Great. So have any of you experienced challenges with mentoring relationships? It doesn't have to be this particular one, just any in general. And then if so, how did you overcome them?
Oh, I can give an example of some challenges that Jayne and I had. So when we first decided to meet, it would have to be over Skype, because at the time I was living in Australia. Well, it would have to be at a certain particular time, because our time zones were very, very different. It helps if you can be flexible. So luckily for me, I'm a morning person. So I was able to meet in my early mornings and Jayne's late afternoons. And we kind of maintained that regular contact at those times. And that was great. But, if it is a bit of an issue, it can be difficult to have an international or, someone who's in a very different time zone to you, if you're going to have a mentoring relationship. And secondly, the first time that we met, there were some technological issues, as there usually are, with which just happens. And I think it can be a little bit awkward at first, especially if you have these technological issues where our first call, I could not see her face and she couldn't see mine, but we could hear each other. And so we were missing that element of reading body language and developing rapport. But, we just talked for ages and, luckily it was a good fit. And the next time we had a meeting, we got the technology on point. So I think it takes a little bit of persistence, problem solving, but it's definitely worth it to have that international mentoring relationship.
Great. Okay. And have there been any surprising outcomes from this and or other mentoring relationships that you didn't anticipate?
Well, yes, I can an answer to this question. There has been several surprising and positive outcomes, also other than this webinar. Well, it has been very helpful for me to have these confidential discussions about own current work and future plans. I have got more than I expected, but also in addition, thanks to Jayne, I have got international contacts, also Christie and Holly, and also Jayne's colleagues to collaborate with. And now we are having this ISBNPA symposium next summer. And also some very unexpected things have happened to me because for the symposium I needed to find data to be something related to our topic at the symposium, and I asked about it from another research group in our institute, and they were happy to give me the data and start to work with that. And some other things happened also, and then eventually, right now I am actually working in that research project. So my funding for the PhD project ended, and I have a job now, which is very great. And I think also I have noticed that my colleagues and my supervisors and close professors at our institute have been very excited that I have a mentor from US, and maybe that has been some kind of a signal to others that I am willing to develop myself and moving forward in my career, although I didn't expect that beforehand. But everything that has happened has been totally positive.
Great. Wonderful. Well, it looks like we should probably open up to Q&A. Thank you all so much. This has been very fun just to learn more about how your experience has been. It's really inspiring. I'm going to share my screen here. So I think we can, if you guys want, keep your videos on. And I'll turn it over to Maureen, who I think, excuse me.
I'm on. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Megan.
Yep.
Great, thank you. And first of all, thank you to all the speakers today. So Jayne, Holly, Elina, and Christie. And thank you to Sarah and Antonio as well, too. That was a fantastic discussion. And so if anyone has any questions, please post them in the question and answer part of the of Zoom. But I actually have a question to start. Megan, you had some really interesting, I guess, more practical items that I wanted to ask first. Could you review the 24-3 again? That was actually really cool.
Yeah, so I was kind of obsessing about doing research for this, and the Harvard Business Review has some really interesting articles about mentoring, one of which is talked about this 24-3 rule, which I had never really heard about before, but it made a lot of sense to me. So the idea is that if somebody comes to you, a mentee, and wants your advice about something, and they have all of these ideas and they're super excited, and maybe what they're saying doesn't seem very practical, which I've definitely been the culprit of that. I get excited about everything. Then instead of just sort of saying, well, that's not possible, you can't do that, it's not something that is even on the table, or giving them all the reasons why they can't do it, the idea is that you take 24 seconds before responding to them and try to think about, well, might this be something that might actually work? Is this something that we could actually figure out how to do, maybe in like a more reasonable way? So rather than sort of providing all the reasons why somebody can't do something, think about maybe there is some way that we can do what they want to do. And so that start with the 24 seconds, give a response that's more positive. And then the idea is that you sort of gradually work up to 24 minutes and then 24 hours before you sort of dismiss something, which I thought was kind of an interesting approach.
Yeah, no, I thought that was
Can
really...
I also add to that as well, Megan? I feel like that's such a good point, because it can be quite demoralizing if you have a lot of questions and you're really excited about a project and someone kind of turns you down. So it's kind of nice to know that like having just a bit of time for a different perspective and approach can be really useful for not only the mentor to open their mind about what are the potential options, but also to the mentee to not discourage them.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I can say from the mentor side that sometimes it is pretty easy when you've had experience in something and someone says something that you've tried before and it didn't work, to say, you know, I don't think that's going to work. But I think it's an excellent idea to really sit back and think about it, because things change, people are different, and they may have a way of going about something that's different than you, and that's important to listen to.
That's great. Thank you. We have a couple of questions. So there may be other tasks on mentoring. What other areas of mentoring are there that have not been covered? Anyone want to respond to that one?
Do you mind repeating the question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Certainly. First of all, thank you for the webinar and sharing the experiences. There may be other tasks on mentoring. What other areas of mentoring are there that have not been covered? Are there any other things that are involved in mentoring that you haven't talked about that you can think of?
I can say something just about, you know, it really depends on the goals of the mentee and where someone's at. So when I'm mentoring someone in our PhD program, for instance, I'm probably going to have a different approach than I necessarily would with Holly, for instance, who's finished her PhD. So sometimes it is about meeting those milestones and keeping on track on something versus understanding about career development. So it does really change depending on where the mentee's at and what they'd like guidance on. And I think there are quite a few, there's some good training programs around. At the University of Minnesota, for instance, we have a mentorship training online program where people can go in and potential mentors can go in and learn about how to be a good mentor and help people meet their goals.
Thank you, Jayne. So another question is, what are the signals for a good working mentoring pair? And what are the signals for when a mentoring partnership stops or discontinues?
I guess I can, oh, go ahead, Christie. No, go ahead, please.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think some good signals, you know, for an ideal mentor would be that I can trust them as my advisor or mentor, and, you know, that I can tell that they're invested in my growth, both personally and professionally, and that they're continually gently facilitating my development. There are times when, you know, whether it's distance or times in my career where maybe I don't need that particular guidance anymore, but to me, I feel that a mentor could be facilitate my development for life. So I hope that my, you know, mentorship with Jayne will continue after my PhD.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, it really depends on, again, the goals of the mentee and the mentor, and it's you know, situation by situation. You can't, there's no like one sort of sign or piece of evidence that you can really use that would be consistent across the board. So if, like Christie was saying, you know, sometimes mentoring relationships aren't as sort of useful, or they're not developing in a way that's really promoting the growth of the mentee. And in that case, then, you know, maybe it's the type of mentoring relationship that you hit pause on and return to later. So this is something that's really dependent on what the mentee wants and needs, and what the mentor is willing and able to give. And a lot of it is, like many of these many of the mentees have mentioned, is the rapport. So if you're not having, if you aren't clicking, and this is just a feeling, it's not something that you can quantify. Mm-hmm. If you're not clicking, then it's not a relationship that will be useful for you or for the mentor.
Thank you. Actually, I had this question as well too. So someone asked, has anyone had any experience in more than a one-on-one mentoring, in terms of more like a group, like two to one? Has anybody had that type of experience?
I have had that experience in an informal setting. This was between myself, I was a PhD student at the time, and actually this is continuing, a PhD student, now postdoc, and another mentee who is a postdoc, or was a postdoc at the time, who was mentored by a very senior professor. And it was because we were all working on a group project. And so we had very specific tasks that we had to do, but he was always talking about how he wanted to build our, our academic portfolio. So he really kind of shaped that project into us, and he kind of understood the different perspectives that we had. I was much more junior, and the other mentee was more senior than me, but he was able to kind of understand our needs and perspectives. So it definitely was really useful to kind of watch someone who's a bit more advanced than you, be mentored as well. But again, it was a very task orientated kind of relationship. So I'm not sure if it would work the way that the relationship between Jayne and I works, where we talk about a lot more abstract kind of career goals. But it certainly was very useful from a task point of view.
Great, thank you, Holly. Does anyone else have any other experience?
Yes, actually I have. The experience is already from some years ago. I think we were there were maybe 5 mentees and 1 mentor, and we were from quite different fields. So I think it was helpful, but in a group you can't get the same kind of relationship than when there is only the 1 mentee and 1 mentor. So I think by so far this mentorship with Jayne has been the most helpful for me.
Okay. Thank you, Elina. I know we have time for maybe 1 more question, if anyone has any further questions, but maybe while we're waiting for that, this has been a fantastic discussion, and there was actually, I think a couple of you mentioned that there was this professional development form, or maybe Holly, you had mentioned this professional development form. I guess what I'm really looking at is sort of strategies to help with this mentoring relationship. And can anybody talk about where are these resources, and how can people, both as a mentor and a mentee, access resources like this?
Well, I can address that. And interestingly enough, given the previous question you had, the form that I asked Holly and Elina and Christie to complete on personal values, really it piqued my interest because it was about not just, here's where I want to end up and how am I going to get there, which I think is important, but what are my values and what really makes me happy and what gets me out of bed in the morning. And so if you think about planning your career in terms of your passion and what you really want to make a difference doing, I think you're going to have a happier career. And so there's burnout and stakes are high and it's difficult. So having something like that you could reflect on in your personal life and your professional life, and do they mesh, was important to me. And I received this form when I was being mentored last year by a university president in the United States who was running a leadership program. So I asked her permission to be able to use it, and she said, of course. And so I've been using that both for myself and for mentees. So it just happened to be one that I thought worked really well. I think a lot of PhD programs have individual development plans, but they're often task-based, and they're not so much thinking about who I am and where I want to go.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jayne.
Mm-hmm.
Megan, we're at 9 o'clock and we don't have any other questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all so much. I'm going to stick my email back up on the screen just so you have it, because I think somebody did ask about that. Oh, there it is. So if you all are interested in the ISBNPA mentoring program, feel free to either go through the webpage or email me directly. Again, this is supposed to be for you, and it's a way to get more involved in ISBNPA, and also a way to connect with people whom you may not connect with otherwise. So it's a really great program, and I look forward to having more people involved.
Thanks everyone for putting it together.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you everyone, and thank you for joining us here today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.